So good day everyone. For today, we are going to tackle about global media cultures. So for our objective in this topic is we will be defining what is culture, to define what is media culture, cite examples of media culture, and to explain the dynamics between global and local cultural production. So first, let us define what is culture. One of the fuels, consequences, and manifestation of globalization is the flow of culture from one geographical area to one another. Culture, in simple terms, refers to humans' way of life, how we present ourselves, what are the choices we make, and how we relate to one another, and how we pursue our aspirations in life. So ang culture di ay nag-refers on how we shared our way of life in a group of people, like how we present ourselves in the society as individuals. It includes like sa atong pag-express sa atong kaugalingon, maybe in our values, beliefs, traditions, our language, how we dress, and etc. Also, it talks about the decision we make, how we solve our own problems, and how we strive to achieve our goals in life. So culture in pinakasimple na term is what we do, how we do it, and why we do it. Next, we will be going to getting to know the two types of culture, the material culture and the non-material culture. Material culture, this way of life manifests in tangible objects, the clothes we use, the infrastructures we build, the things we create. So, tangible objects means kanang atong makita, mahikap, mga physical na objects. Like sa example na dira, clothes na atong suoton, the buildings, the tools, the artworks, the technology, and all the things we use in our daily lives. Material culture shows how people express their way of life through what they build or what they create. While the non-material culture, this also shows in intangible ideas we hold dearly, our beliefs, our traditions, and our practices. Intangible means dili makita, the opposite of tangible objects. It refers to invisible things like sa atong beliefs, atong gituuhan sa atong kinabuhi, our traditions in life, our language, morals, and practices na ginabuhat. These are the ideas and meaning that guides how people think, feel, and behave. Though you cannot touch non-material culture, it plays a big role in shaping our cultures.
So now we're talking about cultures that articulated in symbols or illustrations that convey meaning. So natay lima ka symbols or illustrations. Number one is the language. Number two is values. Number three is beliefs. Number four is practices. And lastly is the norms. So una ta sa language. So language is a system of symbols that enables members of a society to communicate with one another. So like sa ato sa Philippines, atong language is Tagalog and sa um, US is English. So unsaon man nato pag kanang communicate sa usag-usa nga magkasinabtanay. So mao na nga we learn another languages. So mao na nga para makasabot ta sa lain-lain nga languages sa another country. And maybe sa ato sa Philippines, Tagalog ato ang I did siya maybe but Tagalog ang ato ang language but we have different dialects. So magkasinabot ra gyapon tayo nga tanan kay we learn it man as kuan man as globalized man siya. And ikaduha is values. So what is values? Values is what we deem good, desirable, and important. So like sa ethics na discuss naman ni kung unsa ang values, like kung unsa jud ka, kung unsa jud imong pamatasan, kung unsa ang gitudlo sa imong nga mga maayo, unsa i-desire nimo nga makaayo dili ka ng mga bati. And arita sa ikatulo, beliefs. So beliefs is what we deem true. So um noon man sa Philippines nga daghan tag lahi-lahi nga beliefs, daghan tag pagtuo. Una pa lang dira sa religion, daghan tag lahi-lahi nga religion sa mga pagtuo, daghan tag mga tuo sa mga katigwangan sa una nga kanang tuo nila nga ato ra pong nasunod. And ikaapat is practices is how we do things. So like sa akong giingon ganiha sa mga tuo sa mga katigwangan sa una, dili na lang kay nahogra ni nato nga beliefs, but na practice na sad ni nato kung unsa ilang mga gipang tuuhan, unsa ilang gipang buhat, like kanang pagmano sa mga katigwangan. It's a good practices man, and it's a good values. So mao na usa sa example sa practices. And lastly, the norms is the rules or rule and expectations that we have and other have relative to our membership in a society. So norms is kuha naman sabotable naman sa tanan, di ba nga norms is kung unsay mga normal na lang karon, but timan-i nga dili tanang normal para sa tuwa is normal pud para sa lain nga country. Kay we're not talking about sa Philippines naman diri, we're talking about global man. So maybe ang para sa tuwa diri nga normal sa lahi is dili siya normal, but always remember nga not all norms is good. There are some norms that is bad. In Bisayop siya gipaka-normal na lang. So mao to siya. That's all. Thank you.
And now I'm going to talk about how we as humans carry and learn culture through our daily lives. We humans are carriers of culture. This means we learn culture from our homes and communities. It could be from direct instruction, like when our parents tell us what to do, or just by watching and joining community activities. So this process is what we call cultural socialization. So we learn our culture mainly from our families and communities, di ba? Kaya ang atong parents mao ang atong first teacher nga nagtudlo sa ato kung unsay sakto ug dili. And in community, we watch how people behave and follow them if kahibaw ta nga sakto ilang gibuhat. And now, let's proceed to the 4 key terms that describe what happens when we interact with different cultures. So the first one is cultural exchange. When we say cultural exchange, it is when we go out and interact with people from other groups, we experience a different culture. This means when 2 or more cultures share ideas, traditions, or practices in a mutual way. So for example, you become friends with a foreign classmate. You teach them about Filipino folk dance like tinikling, and they teach you how to dance salsa. And another example is you have a Korean friend and you teach them about Filipino food like adobo, and they introduce you to a kimchi and K-pop. So for those examples in cultural exchange, both of them can benefit kay they are sharing their ideas and traditions in a mutual way. The next one is acculturation. So when we say acculturation, it is when we adopt to certain values and practices of the new culture. Or this means we start to adopt some values or practices from another culture. And there is also another term that this happens when a person or group adopts some aspects of another culture while keeping their own. So it is a mix of old and new culture. So for example, an immigrant celebrating Thanksgiving in the US but also cooking traditional dishes from their home country. So in that example, immigrants are starting to adopt some aspects of another culture, like they are celebrating Thanksgiving in the US. Bisag wala na sa ilahang own culture, but they are still keeping their own kay wala nila kalimti ang pag-cook sa ilang mga traditional dishes. So it's a mix of old and new one. So that is what we call acculturation. And the third one is accommodation. So when we say accommodation, it is a lesser degree such that we may tend to adopt the new culture only when we are in public. So accommodation, it is a lesser form of acculturation. We adjust to a new culture but only in certain situations like in public. So for example, an immigrant might speak English and follow local customs in public but still speak their native language and practice their own traditions at home. The fourth one is assimilation. So when we say assimilation, it is a larger degree such that we begin to resemble the people in the other group. So, assimilation is a stronger form of acculturation, where someone completely blends into another culture and even start act and think like the people in that group. So, for example, a child of immigrants who grows up in another country may fully adopt that country's way of life and even forget how to speak their parents' language. And another example is after moving to the US and living there for many years, you speak English all the time, celebrate American holidays, and even forget some traditions from your original culture. So those are the examples of assimilation. So those four key terms that I've discussed about are the four ways we interact with different cultures.
So the next slide is globalization and culture. Cultural flows is a term that used to refer to the dynamics of cultures in the age of globalization. So global cultural flows can be viewed in different ways. So the first view on that is cultural differentialism. So the culture are inherently strong and strongly unique from one another. So from the word inherently, it is passed generation to generation. So and the strongly unique is kini nga culture nila is na magani ay wala gyud nakapareha ba. So the way sila ikuan kanang culture. So ang best example nato ani is si Apwang Od nga legend here in the Philippines. So the way siyang mutato, so the way from the word inherently, ang kini niya nga the way siya mutato dili gyud nagikan siya gipasa na gikan sa mga ninuno ancestors generation to generation. So karon na siya ha, but gitudloan na po niyang anak para puhon ug iyang anak magkaanak pod mapasa pod gyapon. So strongly unique. So the way siya nga mutato is they're not using technology, even though nga kabalo ta karon nga generation is mas advanced. So naa na yung mga machine nga para madali ag tato, but ang ilang gigamit is ang katulang gyapon na needle then stick nya ipokpok ra gyapon nila. So inato sila mo patek. So this view is suggested that there are barriers which shield the culture from being penetrated for external input. So even karon nga kanang mas ni grabe na ang technology. So nagyapoy ga protect sila nga dili gyud sila muka na kay if ila lang ikuan silang culture moro bitong mahugaw. So nagyo sila ilaha nga kuan kanang so ilaha nga barrier. So ano to kanang dili dayon makasud ang nga culture sa ilaha. So naman sila ilaha nga nasa legislate nga ilaha nga tawag ani kanang ilaha nga rules. No even nga naman gani mo sud sa ilaha nga cultures nga the way sa mutato, but dili nila ikuan, dili nila gamiton. Mas ilang i-prefer nga kato ilang nga old ways of tato or lang ilang sundon. So yes.
So next is cultural hybridization. So it is to look at global flows as a creative process which yields combinations of global and local cultures when external inputs interact with internal inputs. So we already tackled about cultural homogenization, which is it is often seen as a negative side of globalization because it leads to the disappearance of unique traditions as local cultures become overshadowed or replaced by dominant global cultures. So here, cultural hybridization, on the other hand, is viewed as positive. It happens when different cultures blend together to create something new, creative and unique, a combination of both global and local influences. So from the name itself, hybridization. So what is a hybrid? So a hybrid is something that results from a mix or combination of two different elements. Like for example, if an American man which happens to be our external input, mirrors a Filipina woman, wherein it is our internal or local input. So their child may be considered as Fil-Am or the Filipino-American, a hybrid identity that carries both culture. So this child is 50% Filipino and 50% American. And magdako siya nga na siya values or pwede siya makaton og English nga language or the Filipino language. And also ang tradition sa Pinoy og makuha sa siyang tradition as a American. Apadorai's 1996 concept of scapes hints that global flows bring forth unique cultural realities everywhere. So he says that global flows moves across the world, but they mix differently in each country. So instead of one global culture so makakuha ta og many unique local versions shaped by those flows he mentioned. Next is these global flows are first ethnoscapes. So it is the movement of people. So when Filipinos visit or move to places like Thailand or China, so ato nang daladalahon ang atong own culture, which is culture sa Philippines kay diri tinagdako. So such as ang ato ang language, ang food preferences, and ang ato ang mga tuo-tuo or ang atong social norms. But being in a different cultural setting exposes us to new practices like ang local tradition ngadto sa bago nga place nga tuwang giadtuan, like ang ilahasad nga mga panulot nila or ang ilahang language, which is over time ma-adapt nato. Next is technoscapes, fluid and interlinked global technology. So for example, Filipinos using smartphones, TikTok, or online payment apps that originally came from other countries. So Filipino users post their traditional or modern dance or even music sa TikTok, which TikTok is originated from China. So when foreigners see these videos, they might find the dance or music interesting or fun. So as a return, some of them kay mag-start og cut-on sa sayaw nato or even our music. So spreading it back to their own countries, which then creates a cross-cultural exchange. What started in the Philippines on TikTok ends up influencing dance trends globally as users from around the world join in. Like example, kung nakabantay mo is katubitang kanta na
I work all night but I feel so calma. Day and night
just like that. So ang nakabantay ko ang mga American man guro na sila kay summer man sila to. So mao na ang ilahang gipanggamit nga mga songs ngadto sa TikTok while gapost sila sa ilahang mga summer vibes, mga outfits, and the beaches that they enjoyed. So even though wala ta nilupad sa lain na lasod, with the use of technology is maka-interact gihapon ta sa mga lain nga tao. So the third one is the finance-scape. So movement of huge amount of money across nation state. Example is the Minibiya Mitsumi. It's gonna be located at the Danao City, Cebu. So it is a leading Japanese electronics manufacturer. So ang mga Japanese is nag-invest nganhi sa Philippines and nagtukod sila ana nga a company which they invested heavily in a production facility ngadto sa Danao City. So kanang company nila is naka-boost siya sa local economy sa Philippines and also nakahatag siya mga trabaho sa mga libuhon ka tawo ngadto sa Danao or sa Cebu. So it also helped the growth of local businesses such as ang lahang suppliers and also the service providers. The fourth one is the mediascapes, fast production and transfer of information. Examples are Filipinos watching Netflix, K-dramas, C-dramas, or Western news on social media. So, its impact on us is it influences how we think or dress, like Suno nato ang style sa ilahang gipanulot sa nakita nato sa media or how we entertain ourselves and even shape our dreams and goals. Like parehas anang nakita nimo sa C-drama na or malantawan nato na ang nakadala sa salida is a successful human being. So ma-inspired ka mabuhat or maskwela para mas-successful sad ka just like them or even the way they move and etc. So the last one is the ideascapes or the movement of political images. Movements like #MeToo, which fights against sexual harassment, or climate change activism, which started in other countries but nakareach siya sa Philippines through social media platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. So daghan nga mga Filipino youth or students and activists began raising awareness about women's rights, LGBTQ plus rights, and environmental issues. So they joined online campaigns, created local protests, or started conversations in schools and communities. So instead of clashing and conflicting cultures, amidst these global flows, integrate or interpenetrate one another, give birth to a hybridized form that is unique from its both global and local origins, known as glocalization. So the word glocalization comes from combining local plus local. So the cultural hybridization is its focus is the blending or mixing of different cultures to create something new. While here in the globalization, so its focus is the adoption of a global product or idea to fit the global culture. Like for example, is the K-drama and K-pop influence on Filipino media. Then we create our own P-pop groups like SB19, Bini, that uses Filipino lyrics, which showcase Filipino values and still have the K-pop feels. And then sa atong mga TV dramas are now being made with Korean style cinematography, but based yapon siya sa Filipino stories and sa mga cultures.
Hi ma'am, hi classmates. So ako da i-explain ang third cultural convergence. So making culture across nation states a little more similar on and homogeneous, leading to more isomorphic means similarity of form or structure or uniform culture. This link with the concept of of culture's assimilation, wherein dominant societies tend to influence other societies to be like them. So, ang dominant societies kay iya i-influence ang small societies na mapareha sila. So, para ma-link sila or naiuban sa kon basta yun na. So, related concepts in process of cultural convergence is what Tomlinson referred to as cultural imperialism. So, sa cultural imperialism kay when mas involved niya ang kanang power yun niya kanang dominant na siya dako nga societies like that. So when cultures consciously impose themselves to other cultures, so if it often kanang ilang a power imbalance like that, where a dominant culture actively influence or enforce nila ang small societies, I mean small societies na mas same sila ha or mali or ilang i-force ang katungkuan like that. And that's all. Thank you.
Media cultures. Media cultures is a culture that emerges to the proliferation of mass media, the intersection between the media and the culture. So, when we say media cultures, it is a connection between the media and the culture. So, let's see here. According to Louie, contended that unlike globalization is quite a complex to define, media is quite straightforward. It means a conveying something or a channel of communication. He states that The intersection between globalization and media be captured in a five distinct areas or eras rather. So the first one is the oral communication. Second one is script. Third one is printing press. Fourth one is electronic media. The fifth one is the digital media. So let's talk about the first one, oral communication. This is the earliest form of media where knowledge and culture were passed down through spoken words, stories, and traditions. In tribal and early societies, this was the main way people communicated. And the second one is script. The development of writing scripts allow for the recording of information, enabling the preservation and expansion of knowledge across generation and regions. So diri naman to nagsugod ang atong for example, di ba? Katong mga manuscript, katong mga katong ganing kuan sa mga sa Egypt, di ba? Am I right? So the third one is printing press. This is revolutionized communication by making it possible to mass produce texts like textbooks and newspapers. So diri naman to sa katong murag modern na era na like katong nanay mga newspapers. Mm. It played a crucial role in the spread of ideas, education, and the formation of public opinion. And the fourth one is electronic media. This era includes technologies like the telegraph, radio, television, and film. This allowed messages to travel faster and reach much wider audiences, helping to shape global culture. So, ang electronic media, katunan ng mga era sa katong mga TVs, radios, telegraph, di ba? Katong mga modernized na mga something. And the fifth one is digital media. This is the current stage marked by the internet, social media, and mobile communication. It allows instant, interactive, and global sharing of information, deeply influencing globalization by connecting people and cultures more directly than ever before. So mao na ni karon nga dali na kay tanan mo na ni nga era nga dali na kay makig-communicate sa people tungod sa aning technology like atong mga cellphones, social medias, di ba? So, in summary, Louie uses these five categories to show how media has evolved and how each stage has played a role in shaping and being shaped by globalization.
Morning, media and the Filipinos. Filipinos are also consumers of various forms of media. In a 2016 study, it was found that while there was a decline in consumption of newspaper, approximately 96% of Filipinos watch television, devoting almost 4 hours in watching their favorite shows Archangel. The same survey observed increasing consumption of digital media due to internet accessibility. In a 2019 study, it was revealed that Filipinos are the world's top user of social media, spending a little more than 10 hours online daily. The world's average online use is 6 hours and 42 minutes. Internet use in front of computer a little more than 5 hours daily. The world's average is 3 hours and 28 minutes. Gonzales, 2019. Similarly, Filipinos love to watch movies. So, sa 2016 study showed nga 96% sa mga Pilipino kay magtan-aw gyapon og TV halos 4 hours kada adlaw bisan ni gamay na ang nagbasa og newspapers tungod sa Archangel nga movie. Tungod sa mas dali nga internet access, ni-increase pud ang paggamit sa digital media. By 2019, na-prove nga Pinoy ang top users sa social media sa tibuok kalibutan. More than 10 hours online per day compared sa world average na 6 hours and 42 minutes. Kung sa computer average nga Pinoy nagamit more than 5 hours a day, taas taas kaysa sa global average nga 3 hours and 28 minutes. Kay alam kay hilig lang gid ang mga Pilipino mo gamit ug mo tan-aw og salida. So Pinoy love media, TV, internet, social media, and movies. They spend more time most people around the world. So mo na to guys kay sa 2016 nag-study sila nga mas nagtaas ang average sa magtan-aw og TV kumpara sa magbasa og newspaper. Tungod mo to sa movie nga Archangel. So mo na to, thank you.
So the last one is media in the Filipino youth. So particularly among the Filipino youth, media is influential in many aspects. So first, in Raniza 2003, which is in a literature of review on the mediatization of Filipino culture, it is presented how mass media paves the way of emergence of youth. So first on that is shaping how the youth responds to the role expectations, how they consume, how they organize and form groups, and how they take part in cultural production. Yeah.
So next is the issues in media cultures. In the age of globalization, there are a few issues to address. First is the access. So nga nung na-issue man ni siya ang access? It is because not all countries has the access. Like for example sa mga technology nila, na yung mga countries na kanang wala kayo sila yung mga access sa media and technology tungod sa ilang poor na economy sa ilahang country. So next is the production and consumption. The production and consumption of media are also critical areas of concern. Globalization has led to the homogenization of media content, with Western cultural narratives and values dominating the global media landscape. This has resulted in the suppression of local cultures and diversity, as well as the loss of traditional practices and customs. So, muna siya. Ikatulo is the inclusion and participation. Inclusion and participation are essential components of a healthy media culture. However, marginalized groups, including women, minorities, and indigenous people, often lack opportunities for representation and participation in media. This exclusion perpetuates the dominance of existing power structures and limits the diversity of perspective and the voices in media content. So lastly is the cultural integrity. Cultural integrity is a critical issue in the age of globalization. The unauthorized use of cultural symbols, traditions, or practices known as cultural appropriation can be particularly problematic. Moreover, the loss of cultural identity and heritage is a significant concern as globalization threatens local cultures and tradition. The preservation of cultural integrity is essential for maintaining community identity and heritage. So that would be all. Thank you.